it feels uncomfortable because it is uncomfortable. You know, if you've wanted to find a way to get rich quickly, these days real estate's getting a little pricey. Why not try politics? Hi, I'm Scott Ott with Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, and this episode of Right Angle is brought to you by the members at BillWhittle.com. Use any of the social liking or approval or notification devices you see before your eyes here, and that actually helps us. They actually send a tiny little breath mint to us each time you hit that button. So we have a little box at the door here where we're just collecting those, and eventually we intend to use them, maybe when we meet you in person. So gentlemen, this is a story that was sparked by something I read about Stacey Abrams, the former gubernatorial candidate in Georgia, I believe it was. And also was renowned for the fact that she helped lead voter registration drives, which helped President Biden, they say, get elected thanks to the votes in Georgia as well. She was unsuccessful in her gubernatorial campaign and at the time was being mocked by Republicans for basically not being a very good steward of her resources, and she owed the IRS some money, and her net worth at that time was around $109,000. Stephen Green, her net worth now is somewhere north of $3.5 million, and last year she made something like $3.65 million. A lot of her money is coming in now thanks to some 6 books that she's either written, co-written, or republished in the last 2 to 3 years, as well as public speaking fees. And Steve, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I've got this crazy idea that when you go into public service, in fact, the framers of the Constitution thought when you went into public service, it was going to hurt. It was going to hurt you financially. And most of those guys were pretty wealthy. They were doing okay, but they, even George Washington, refused to take the salary of the President of the United States because he just thought public service shouldn't be like that. Have times changed so much, Steve, now that nobody's going to look at Stacey Abrams' newfound multimillionaire status with a questioning glance and say, hey, wait a minute. How did you make your money? You mean if it hadn't been for politics, you'd still be kind of scraping by?
Yeah, let's look at the big picture first, then I'll drill down to some of those details. When George Washington was president, and up until, a little more than 100 years ago, Washington was a pretty small city that not a whole lot of tax dollars flowed through. So there wasn't very much influence to peddle. Now the stakes are much, much bigger, aren't they? And so is the grift. I remember, I think it was Robert Byrd, the Democrat former Klansman who was Senate Majority Leader for a time, caused a memoir of his own to be written by somebody else. And some union was caught buying his memoirs by the pallet. They just had crates of these books that had never been opened. So let's call that what it was. That was money laundering scheme to get money to Robert Byrd by taking union guys' garnished wages and funneling them through the union to Robert Byrd in the form of purchases for books that nobody would ever read or indeed take out of their boxes. And I remember it was at about the same time, within just a couple of years of that President Reagan, just out of office, stirred up a huge controversy on the left because he went to Japan after he was not president any longer and was paid very handsomely for giving a speech. And even some conservatives like me thought that was a bit untoward and felt like Reagan had let us down a little bit. We weren't used to being let down by Reagan. And now you get to cases like Stacey Abrams, a person of no significant achievement other than to have, who knows, who has actually bought these books of hers. We saw a similar case to Robert Byrd's in Baltimore just a couple of years ago. And let's look at Joe Biden. He has never held a job outside of public service that I'm aware of, certainly not in the last 50 years. And he has grown quite rich. I looked this up in between segments. His net worth, and I think this is a little dated, is estimated to be between $8 and $9 million. He has not produced a product or performed a service in the free market in his adult life. It just hasn't happened. And yet he's extremely wealthy. And of course, maybe the ultimate example is the Clinton Foundation. There were two of these, the Clinton Global Initiative and the Clinton Foundation, which raked in, I want to say, I know it's at least $150 million over the year. And that funding dried up as soon as Hillary lost to Donald Trump in 2016. I don't know what the solution is, Scott, but it's corrupt as all damn hell, isn't it?
Bill Whittle, I don't think that our politicians have to take a vow of poverty, but it does seem to me, and see if you agree, that public service ought to cost something to the person involved. If giving a speech, if you're in demand as a speaker because of the public service that the public conferred upon you, that honorific of being a congressman or a governor or something like that, and in this case, Stacey hasn't been elected. But if that comes as a result of your efforts on behalf of the public, it seems to me that even if they pay you $500,000 to speak, you ought to turn around and give most of that to registering voters in Georgia for all I care, but to some cause rather than using it for personal enrichment. Am I way off on this?
Well, I think the best defense of Stacey Abrams, who of course is the Kardashian of politics in America, is that she was never elected, and that's her best defense.
Fair enough.
I don't think I'd be paying money to go see her speak, because I've heard little bits of her speak, and I don't think big bits of her speaking would be an improvement.
There are no little bits of her.
However,
stop.
Speaking engagement is a legitimate source of income, or it better be anyway. Books and stuff, these are all legitimate sources of income. I have no problem whatsoever with her making millions of dollars off of these things. But if she's making millions of dollars or getting $400,000 salary for a charitable event or being on a board of directors for something, that's where it's public money being raised in order to accomplish something. I was going to go right to the Clintons, but Steve beat me to it. Yeah, sure. They raised, they were $100 million in income donations and what was it, $65,000 in actual expense, some insane thing like that, right? So I don't have any problem with Stacey Abrams making money off of speaking agents, off of books, but I do have a problem with her getting a big salary from something that's supposed to be for something else. And my main problem is, if you are currently holding office, then you are being paid to hold office, and part of holding office is giving speeches. It is immoral and unethical to take a private payment for a speech that you give if you are already holding office. You're getting paid to be governor, or at least you fantasize that you are.
Someday she will be.
Maybe she will be. If she is the governor and she gives us a private talk and they pay her, $100,000 or they pay her $100, doesn't matter. That's double dipping. It's immoral. Your paying job is to go out and do this. Now, once you're out of office, and I wish her that she stay out of office for the rest of her life personally, then she can make money any way she wants to. It's not up for me to say whether or not somebody should be buying these ridiculous, absurd, unreadable books or listening to any of these boring, nonsensical, monotonous speeches. I'm not the kind of person to judge.
She's a fascinating case in that she's been unsuccessful at running for office and somehow parlayed being a loser into, $5 or $6 million in book and speech fees. That really is kind of amazing. But it seems to me that the value that she has is that so many people think she's actually going to be in office. So they think that someday this is going to be an elected official, and so they're interested in her life. And she's managed to turn this into a little industry of basically, look at me, I'm Stacey Abrams. I'm, as Al Gore used to joke, I used to be the next president of the United States. She used to be the next governor of Georgia. So it feels uncomfortable because it is uncomfortable. It feels like, why was she not successful financially in life before she ran for governor? Why was it that, because she's not a kid. Why was she just kind of getting by and doing okay and maybe being middle class or lower middle class all that time? And then all of a sudden, she's got a story worth telling. Well, it's because a lot of people gave her a lot of money to elevate her profile, to make her a big shot. And then she became a national figure because the news agents or the CNNs of the world wanted to talk to her about voter registration. And they wanted to talk to her about what it would be like if Georgia had a Black female governor. And so we created this person, those people who contributed to her campaign. And now she is converting that into cash for herself. And that's just why it seems kind of unclean. I don't begrudge anybody a fortune. I think you ought to go out and earn a fortune. I think you ought to do it outside of the realm of politics by providing something of value to people. And one might argue that she provided value by getting more people registered in the state of Georgia. And so she provided value to President Joe Biden, who, in part thanks to her, was able to get to the White House. But she really hasn't created anything that has to do with her abilities, her value that she can sell or a service she can provide so that she can really make people's lives better. If you're going to be governor of Georgia, then why not take that money that you got because people thought you were going to be governor of Georgia and give it to the poor, the homeless, the starving, the people who have no health care in Georgia. Do something with that money that will return it from the same fountain from which it emerged. For Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com for making Right Angle possible.